Wrestle Kingdom 16. This is always a fun time of year, and I always look forward to watching Wrestle Kingdom, and I don't get to watch as much New Japan during the course of the year. I always make it a point to watch as much of the G1 as I can. I end up not seeing every match, but I watch as much of the G1 as I can. There's certain big shows like Dominion, or they'll have a big main event at Wrestling Dontaku in May. Wrestle Kingdom is one I always make time for, and I always enjoy. And this year was no different. It was just a different vibe because of the circumstances of the way things are right now. New Japan announced its return to Access TV with encore episodes from its earlier run on Access starting January 20th at 10 p.m. Eastern after Impact Wrestling. They're going to be airing the Chris Jericho-Kenny Omega match from Wrestle Kingdom 12 on that date. All new episodes will begin airing weekly on March 3rd. New episodes doesn't mean recent shows, I don't think. I think it's still going to be a collection of big matches from the last few years. So they crawled back in bed with Access after Access canceled them a few years ago because they didn't want to work with Impact. New Japan did not at the time want to work with Impact, and so Anthem, which owns Impact, dropped the axe and kicked New Japan off Access. And so now they're back. Now they're working with Impact anyway. So it only made sense, I guess, between the fact they're working with Impact now, the product is so cold, it's not as if there was a better television deal waiting for them somewhere else or they would have taken it. So at least they're back on a real network now. The thing about these shows, all the crowds can do, all that they're allowed to do, is clap. They are not allowed to cheer and boo and make noise. All they can do is clap. It fucking sucks. But at least we got a show at all. Let alone one in the Tokyo Dome. A mostly empty Tokyo Dome, but I thought the main event and the Shibata match were the best matches on night one. This was Katsuyori Shibata's first Tokyo Dome match since losing the never open weight title to Hiroki Goto at Wrestle Kingdom 11. That was 5 years ago. Ren Narita was the opponent. We didn't know coming in who the opponent was going to be. I thought maybe Suzuki, maybe. It ended up being Ren Narita. Not a marquee name, but a name that made sense, I guess, given that he came out of the New Japan dojo where Shibata is the head trainer. He basically looks like Shibata Jr. He's almost like a Shibata clone. Shibata getting on the mic before the match and throwing out the rules. This was supposed to be a grappling match. This was not supposed to be a regular wrestling match. He gets into the ring. He asks for the mic, which is odd, because usually they don't do that in New Japan. Usually they'll ask for the mic after the match. He asks for the microphone, and he says this is going to be a regular wrestling match with striking allowed. And I thought that was great. And Kevin Kelly on commentary sold it like he was going into business for himself, and he didn't tell anybody, and he was shooting. I know Meltzer and the Observer said that it was a shoot and he really didn't tell anybody beforehand. I don't believe that. I think whoever told Meltzer that is just working him. I also laughed at the line in the Observer. This was the funniest thing that I saw or heard or read all week long. There's a line in the Observer. He was talking about Shibata, and he mentioned Shibata's injury from 2017, which was not funny. But he mentioned the injury from 2017 and how he had to have his brain removed from his head during surgery. They removed his brain. I love Dave. I know what he meant. It's a version of the story that he's told before, and I've told it here on the podcast, that the injury was such that Shibata had to have part of his skull removed to alleviate pressure on the brain. Not that he actually had his fucking brain removed. He would be fucking dead if that happened. It was a typo, but I laughed very hard when I read that. It's like the typo in November when Dave wrote that Kyle O'Reilly also has his death coming up soon. He was talking about Johnny Gargano's contract coming up, and Kyle's contract was also coming up. Instead of saying that, though, he said Kyle has his death coming up. I assume he meant date. Poor Kyle had Meltzer spoiling his own death in The Observer. But this was great, and Shibata won with the PK. Edge, was gone for 9 years and came back. Bryan Danielson was gone for 3 years. And he's out there now having some of the best matches of his life. None of them had a life-threatening injury like Shibata did. And he was gone for almost 5 years. I hope he can work his way up to high-profile opponents and a high-profile Tokyo Dome match next year. The Evil and Ishii match for the Never Openweight title absolutely sucked. Evil won the championship. And it pains me to say that about an Ishii match. I love Ishii. A lot of people love Ishii. I very rarely, if ever, can say that I watch a match of his and think it's the worst anything. This was the worst thing I saw on the entire card. I thought it sucked. Ever since Evil turned heel, his matches are the worst thing about these New Japan shows. Him being part of a group called the House of Torture is very appropriate. I could not think of a more appropriate name. Takes a lot to have a bad match with Ishii. This was even worse because all of the interference and all of the antics and all of the cheating is designed to get heat on a show where the fans are not allowed to cheer or boo. All they can do is clap. So what you end up with is complete silence. This was stupid. We had Hiroki Goto and Yoshihashi beating Zack Sabre Jr. and Tai Chi to win the IWGP Heavyweight Tag Team titles. They had a good match. Kevin Kelly admitted when it was over how thin the tag team division is on the heavyweight side. Can you imagine Michael Cole doing the same thing on SmackDown? Boy, that was a really good match, but, we're really thin on tag teams here on SmackDown. I would appreciate the honesty if they actually let him say something like that. And Kevin Kelly was saying, it's very thin right now in the heavyweight tag team division. And they might have to have singles guys teaming up until the borders, really start opening up again. A little bit of honesty can go a long way. I was surprised to see Hiromu lose to El Desperado, but perhaps he's moving up to the heavyweight division soon, like Will Ospreay did. I thought it was good. They had a good match, but it didn't feel like it rose to the level of some of those big Hiromu matches I've seen him have in the past. And then we had Kazuchika Okada challenging Shingo Takagi for the IWGP Heavyweight title. World Heavyweight title. Big match Okada at the Tokyo Dome. There's nothing better. Even a half-empty Tokyo Dome. There's nothing better. Actually, there's nothing better in all of wrestling than those final few minutes of an Okada match. This was excellent. Not just the final few minutes, but the entire thing. This was excellent. This felt like a Wrestle Kingdom main event. This was a rematch from Dominion last year where Shingo beat Okada to win the vacant title. Okada had to win the G1 to get back to the Tokyo Dome main event. Okada was out with the Antonio Inoki-inspired gear during his entrance. This year, New Japan is celebrating its 50th anniversary of the company that Inoki founded. Inoki has been in very poor health. You could tell from what little interview footage we saw of him on that Dark Side of the Ring episode on the Collision in Korea that he looked very frail. But he has vowed to try his best to be there in March for the 50th anniversary show. After his match on night 2, Okada said that he was waiting for Inoki to be there for it and to find the energy to be there in the ring for the anniversary. They're trying to will this man back into the ring, not to wrestle, but, back into the ring to be there. It is funny because he's basically, Inoki has been persona non grata in the company that he founded for years because he, back in, I guess it was the mid-2000s, he kind of booked New Japan into oblivion. And he made a lot of enemies. And so he has not been adored by the people in that company. He has not been honored and acknowledged until now because it's the anniversary and because he looks like he's so close to death. All of a sudden it's all about Inoki and trying to get him back. And so we'll see if that actually ends up happening. But Okada wins with the Rainmaker in a fantastic match. And we got our first match of the year candidate for 2022. I liked how Okada bowed to the old belt after the match. He's been carrying around that old IWGP belt, the one that he wore many times. That was sort of his trophy for winning the G1. He didn't want to carry the briefcase around. He brought back the old IWGP belt. I wish they would have brought it back, period. But that was not to be. He bowed to the belt. and he handed it off, and he accepted the new championship. I am going to miss that belt. It is appropriate that on the 50th anniversary, Okada would be the one holding the IWGP title at a time when New Japan could really use a shot in the arm. I can't say that I blame them for going back to Okada, but I still maintain that Will Ospreay deserved a longer run with that belt, and I hope at some point he gets it. But that leads us into Wrestle Kingdom 16 Night 2. Night 2 I thought was better than Night 1. We had a tag team match with 4 of the women from STARDOM. I had somebody email me at the end of the year telling me that STARDOM was the best promotion in the world in 2021. I know they did very good business. Despite the pandemic, they did very good business last year. I just don't watch it regularly enough to judge one way or the other. I did watch part of the free show they aired live on YouTube a week ago. One of their shows, they just put the whole thing on YouTube. I think it aired at like 12:30 in the morning Eastern time. I wouldn't have known about it if I didn't see Meltzer tweet that it was airing at 12:30 in the morning. So I have enjoyed what I've seen. To have a STARDOM match air as part of the main card for the first time and not as a dark match attraction for the live crowd was a very big deal. That was a very big deal for Joshi Wrestling. It was Tam Nakano and Saya Kamitani against Mayu Iwatani and Starlight Kid. Kamitani wins it with a Phoenix Splash. I enjoyed it. I don't know of their storylines or anything, but the action was good. There was a Pro Wrestling Noah invasion with Keiji Muto leading probably, I'd say 24 or so Noah talents to the ring to promote last night's New Japan vs. Noah event. That was technically considered Wrestle Kingdom Night 3. Not at the Tokyo Dome. They had a show at the Yokohama Arena. I was going to try to watch it. I was going to try to watch the New Japan vs. Noah show and did not realize. I just assumed it was going to be airing on New Japan World. And in fact, it did not air on New Japan World. It aired on some Japanese pay-per-view service, Abema, or Abema, whatever it's called. I think it's hitting New Japan World in a week on delay. I will watch it then. And if I have any thoughts on it, I'll talk about it on the sound off. But I did not see Night 3 because I did not have access to it. But we had LIJ came down to the ring with all these Noah people in the ring. Here comes LIJ, led by Shingo. And he's counting the number of guys that are in the ring. And he thought better of getting inside because they were clearly outnumbered. They had to do something to hype up the third night. This was their way of doing that. If this was Raw, there would have been a giant brawl, but there's no point in doing a big brawl like that in front of a crowd that can only clap. It was a cool visual, though, seeing the entire Noah roster in the ring at the Dome. Sonata and Great-O-Khan, I thought that was pretty dull. I thought Jeff Cobb would top Naito, but with Naito coming out at the end of the show to confront Okada, I can see why he won. They had a good match. Not the big showing for Cobb I thought it would be because he came into the match hobbled with a knee injury. And you could tell just by watching him the way he was hobbling on one leg every time he was thrown into the ropes. It was painful to watch. He hurt the knee in the 6-man tag match on night 1 that he was in. So he was limited in what he could do. He had an MRI done the next day and was still waiting on the results to see how bad the damage is. Tanahashi and Kenta had a no disqualification match with weapons. That was something we usually do not see on these Tokyo Dome shows, especially not in the semi-main. They had a garbage match with chairs and tables, the ladder, the kendo sticks. Can't forget the kendo sticks. Tanahashi even hit him in the head with a guitar at one point, like he was Jeff Jarrett. Or Jeff Jarrett stealing the Honky Tonk Man's gimmick. There was an avalanche falcon arrow to Tanahashi through a table, at which point Kenta grabbed another table and a gigantic ladder. This thing had to be every bit of 12 to 15 feet. Little did he know he was setting up the instrument of his own destruction. It was the only moment that I could remember from either night where we actually heard noise from the fans and not just clapping. There was an audible gasp when Tanahashi was teasing pushing the ladder over with Kenta on it, which eventually he did. And Kenta crashed and burned face first onto a trash can in the ring. Instantly, he was bleeding. His eye was all fucked up and swelling up. Tanahashi placed him on the table in the ring, and he started climbing the ladder himself. And then he dove off, Shawn Michaels style from WrestleMania 10, arms outstretched, down through Kenta and the table. What a visual that was. What a visual it was seeing Kenta's blood smeared across that piece of table as Tanahashi crawled on top of him to regain the IWGP United States title. Kenta's eye was not his only injury coming out of the match. He suffered a dislocated left hip, a broken nose, tendon damage to his finger, and severe lacerations to his back on that Tanahashi splash off the ladder. So he was held off yesterday's New Japan versus Noah show. He was supposed to be part of Team Noah in one of the matches. He did spend 14 years there. He won multiple titles before ever coming to New Japan. So Kenta is obviously very deeply connected to Pro Wrestling Noah. Now we can get that match with Tanahashi and Jon Moxley at some point, borders permitting. You know, this was every hardcore match these days, but those final few minutes I thought were great. And you know, I mentioned Shawn Michaels diving off the ladder at WrestleMania 10. I would not be surprised at all to find out that Tanahashi was thinking of Shawn Michaels when he did that spot. He was a huge Shawn Michaels fan. You know, before the G1 final a few years ago, he said that he was really nervous, and to calm himself down, he pictured Shawn Michaels in his mind. He called him his inspiration. I think he may have inspired that dive. Okada pulled another 4.5-star match out of his ass on Wednesday, 24 hours after doing the same thing on Tuesday. I think I liked the Ospreay match a little bit more, but they were both pretty much on the same level. I loved the spot where Ospreay hit the standing shooting star, Okada got the knees up, sent Ospreay into the ropes, and Okada went for the dropkick. And the way that Ospreay caught him and delivered that powerbomb, like as soon as he came off the ropes, Ospreay just jumped into the air, you know, ass first to catch Okada as he was coming down from that attempted dropkick, and just it looked fucking great. What do they call that expression? The chef's kiss? That's what that was. I thought that was awesome. But in the end, it was Okada with the Rainmaker retaining the title. I said in my predictions, if Okada wins on night 1, he retains on night 2. But if he loses on night 1, then Ospreay takes the title from Shingo on night 2. So when Okada won on night 1, I pretty much knew how this was going to go down. And right now, he is the champion that New Japan needs. I know it's, you know, LOL Okada again for a lot of people, but they need their biggest star in the driver's seat right now more than ever. And they have to hope that this COVID shit dies down enough to where they can start to claw back a lot of the momentum that they've lost. You know, not being able to fly in a lot of the foreign talent. It's ridiculous that we just had a Wrestle Kingdom and Jay White was sitting at home. A year ago after Wrestle Kingdom, in that promo he cut, he was one of the most talked about names. And since then, nothing. Nothing. Now, it's not New Japan's fault. I think the issue is that he can't leave the States because of some kind of green card issue. But it's stuff like that. You know, Ibushi going down with an injury. Kota Ibushi wasn't even on the card. They've seemed very snake-bitten. Hopefully 2022 is kinder to them than 2021 was. So this was not on the level of past Wrestle Kingdom shows, but the main events on each night were absolute fire. I know this is going to be breaking news to a lot of people, but Okada is a very good professional wrestler.